In our headlines on this Thursday, July 24th, here in South Korea, Seoul's planned 2+2 trade meeting with Washington, initially scheduled for Friday, was cancelled by the Trump administration about 1 hour before the South Korean delegation's departure on this Thursday. Meanwhile, the Bank of Korea says the country's real gross domestic product rebounded 0.6% on quarter in the second quarter, higher than widespread market expectations. And heatwave warnings have been issued in many parts of the country, including here in capital Seoul, with the mercury set to surge to 38 degrees Celsius this coming weekend. High-level trade talks between officials here and their American counterparts under the 2+2 framework scheduled for this coming Friday in the U.S. have been cancelled. Our Park Gun-woo has the latest.
Just about an hour before departing for the U.S. on Thursday, Finance Minister Koo Yoon-chul was notified that the 2+2 high-level meeting had been cancelled. The meeting, originally scheduled for Friday, was to have been between Minister Koo and Chief Free Trade Negotiator Yeo Han-gu and their U.S. counterparts, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. According to the Finance Ministry, the cancellation was due to Bessent's urgent schedule, though no specific details from the U.S. were disclosed. The ministry also said the U.S. proposed rescheduling the meeting for the near future, and both sides will now work to set a new date as soon as possible. Industry Minister Kim Jong-un's 2 days of meetings with Trump administration figures, including Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and Energy Secretary Chris Wright, are set to proceed as scheduled from today. That comes following the U.S. reaching a deal with Japan to lower tariff rates from 25% to 15%. On questions about the deal between the U.S. and Japan, Minister Kim said it was too early to make any judgments.
We're carefully examining the U.S.-Japan deal to determine how we should respond. Some elements we can refer to, while others need more of a comparison.
Speaking on Trump's latest remarks, warning that countries unwilling to open their markets won't see any tariff relief, Kim said this has been Trump's consistent stance and the government has been closely monitoring the situation. He said his visit can be described as a full-court press, aiming not only for tariff cuts, but also to bolster cooperation in key strategic sectors, such as manufacturing and energy. With Trump's deadline for reciprocal tariffs approaching, South Korea is entering the final stages of negotiations with Washington to possibly achieve a breakthrough. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
And the U.S. president says U.S. trade partners will need to open up their markets to American imports if they hope to see lower tariffs. Our Lee Seung-jae covers his remarks.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday pressed trading partners to open their markets in order to avoid much higher tariffs from the U.S. The U.S. leader made the remarks in a social media post, stressing that Washington will only lower tariffs if a country agrees to open its market, adding that those that fail to do so will be met with much higher tariffs. Trump also said through such agreements, U.S. businesses will boom. The latest remarks put pressure on South Korea and other countries to find ways to open their markets in exchange for the reduced tariff Trump unveiled in April. Seoul has been pushing to avoid the proposed 25% reciprocal tariffs, as well as sector-specific tariffs on steel, aluminum, and automobiles that would be a major blow to its export-reliant economy. Meanwhile, in touting the recent trade deal made with Japan, which lowers its tariff rate to 15%, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said the $500 billion investment from Japan in exchange for the lowered rate will give the U.S. the ability to choose where it will be invested. In an example, Lutnick says if Trump decides to create more antibiotics in the U.S., Japan will fund the project and give it to a U.S. business that will operate the project, while 90% of the profits will go to the American taxpayer and 10% to Japan. The White House said Wednesday that the money could be used to invest in key industries.
And these funds will be spent at President Trump's discretion and direction into key industries such as energy, semiconductors, critical minerals, pharmaceuticals, and shipbuilding.
The spokesperson said there are still many more countries that need to strike a deal with the U.S., adding that Washington has sent 25 letters to countries around the world. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And the European Union is reportedly nearing a tariff deal with the Trump administration. According to the Financial Times, a 15% tariff is likely to be levied on the bloc's imports into the American market, as opposed to 30%. The report cites sources who also say the two sides may agree on tariff exemptions for products such as aircraft, distilled spirits, and medical devices. Now, since April, goods from the EU have faced a 10% tariff, on top of the existing average U.S. tariff of 4.8%. Back on the local front, Korea's real gross domestic product for the second quarter rebounded slightly, gaining higher, that is slightly, than market expectations. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon covers the latest findings.
South Korea's real gross domestic product, a key indicator of the economy, grew by 0.6% on quarter in the second quarter of the year. That's according to the Bank of Korea's preliminary data on Thursday. This is a bounce back, as in the first quarter, the nation's real GDP contracted by 0.2% on quarter, with the previous two quarters also showing stagnant growth. On top of this, the quarter two number exceeded market expectations of a 0.5% gain.
This second quarter GDP can be summed up as strong growth driven largely by the private sector, particularly exports and consumption.
Specifically, private consumption rose 0.5% while government spending increased 1.2%. And although still on a downward trend, the rate of decline for construction and facility investment both stood at negative 1.5%. The BOK zoomed in on the increased spending and that it has been gradually getting better, especially with more spending on entertainment.
We're seeing a gradual improvement. Conditions in May were better than in April, and June was even better than May. In terms of services, ticket sales for performances, for example, saw a significant jump. Restaurant demand and spending, which had been sluggish, also showed signs of recovery.
Meanwhile, both exports and imports saw gains. In the second quarter, exports rose 4.2% from the previous quarter, driven by strong global demand for semiconductors and petrochemical products. Imports were also up by 3.8%. The Bank of Korea noted that improved petrochemical exports were partly due to reduced refining capacity in the U.S. and Europe, which increased demand for Korean petroleum products. Pharmaceutical and cosmetic exports remain strong as well, aided by expanded U.S. and EU import approvals and continued global interest in K-beauty. Officials say some of the recent surge came from pre-tariff demand ahead of looming trade measures, though the actual impact of tariffs has yet to fully materialize. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, SK Hynix appears to have posted its best-ever quarterly performance in the second quarter, thanks to surging demand for AI chips, including high-bandwidth memory chips. According to preliminary data from the company on this Thursday, its operating profit amounted to around $6.7 billion, up nearly 70% on year. Now, sales also jumped by over 35%. Both operating profits and sales set new all-time quarterly records, breaking the previous highs seen in the last quarter of 2024. In other news, South Korea is seeking to reshape its regulatory landscape for digital assets, while its central bank remains cautious. Our correspondent Moon Ji-young explains.
As stablecoins, particularly those backed by the US dollar, are set to rapidly expand globally, major nations are stepping up efforts to institutionalize and regulate these digital assets, including South Korea. To this end, ruling party lawmakers and the Korea Capital Market Institute hosted a key policy forum on Wednesday to discuss integrating stablecoins into the nation's institutional framework.
We are working on the stablecoin bill by establishing a dedicated task force. Through extensive discussions, significant progress has been made in solidifying the direction of the legislation. We anticipate that the bill will be formally introduced sometime next week.
The institutionalization of stablecoins is being pursued as part of President Lee Jae-myung's broader plan to establish South Korea as a digital asset hub. The stablecoin bill is expected to advance based on an authorization system, proposing to raise the minimum capital requirement for stablecoin issuers to at least 5 billion Korean won or $3.7 million, which is higher than the previous proposal, and to enforce a perpetual one-to-one reserve requirement. Meanwhile, the Bank of Korea has raised concerns over potential side effects.
If one-peg stablecoins are introduced, there could be an issue where their supply creates its own demand from a broad monetary perspective. If stablecoins are issued, the central bank might not intervene when conducting monetary policy, potentially influencing inflation.
While the Financial Services Commission underscored the necessity of establishing legal protection for domestic users of foreign-issued stablecoins, the Finance Ministry emphasized the critical importance of defining their legal classification, citing concerns over their potential misuse for illicit foreign exchange dealings or the embezzlement of export proceeds. Although legislative approaches varied, all participants underscored that a robust legal framework for stablecoins must be established, taking into comprehensive consideration Korean won sovereignty, financial innovation, and stability. Moon Ji-young, Arirang News.
Heatwave warnings have been issued in many parts of the country, including here in Seoul, with the mercury set to surge to 38 degrees Celsius this coming weekend. Our Pyongyang covers the scorching weather.
Korea is experiencing record-breaking heat, with Seoul expected to climb to 38 degrees Celsius over the weekend. On Thursday, the Korea Meteorological Administration issued heatwave warnings for Seoul and other areas of the country. Additional heatwave advisories have been issued as well. For Seoul, this marks the first heatwave warning issued in 11 days. A heatwave warning is issued when the maximum daily perceived temperature is expected to exceed 35 degrees Celsius for at least 2 consecutive days. And a heatwave advisory is issued when the perceived temperature is expected to exceed 33 degrees. A heatwave alert may also be issued when significant damage is expected due to extreme heat. Korea has recently seen an unusual pattern of heat waves and torrential rains, leading to a surge in heat-related illnesses, widespread flooding, and landslides. This has been caused by a combination of factors.
The reason why this year's heat waves in Korea have been particularly severe is due to the air masses that dominate Korea's summer, namely the North Pacific air mass and the Tibetan air mass.
High sea surface temperatures near the Philippines have intensified the North Pacific high, which expanded northwestward this year due to the lack of descending Arctic air. Additionally, reduced snowfall over the Tibetan Plateau and warmer Indian Ocean waters pushed the Tibetan high further north, increasing its impact on South Korea. The heat is expected to get worse over the next few days.
In densely populated urban areas, the urban heat island effect adds to the heat. So actual temperatures in city centers where we live could approach 40 degrees Celsius.
The Korea Meteorological Administration warns of potential atmospheric instability next week due to interactions between typhoons and other systems, and urges the public to stay updated and respond accordingly. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung has called for strong measures to protect migrant workers from mistreatment. At a weekly meeting with top aides on this Thursday, he made reference to an online video showing a Sri Lankan worker bound in plastic wrapping and dragged by a forklift at what appears to be a brick factory in Naju City, Jeollanam-do Province. The president denounced the disturbing incident, calling discrimination and related violence a crime and unforgivable. Accordingly, he urged relevant ministries to look into human rights violations against marginalized groups, including migrants and socially vulnerable, to frame out preventative measures. South Korea appears to be leaving open the possibility of inviting North Korea's Kim Jong-un to this year's APEC meeting. Now, while officials at the Foreign as well as Unification Ministries here stress that no formal discussion is underway, they've also been quick to point out that APEC host nations in the past have extended invitations to non-APEC member leaders. Analysts, for their part, say the simple act of floating such an idea itself signals an openness to cross-border engagement, despite the unlikely chance of North Korea attending the multilateral meeting. Staying with North Korea, Kim Jong-un has doubled down on military readiness while overseeing an artillery drill this past Wednesday, during which he called for a hostile perspective toward enemy forces. This phrase has often been used to refer to South Korea or the US, but on Wednesday he stopped short of naming a country. An official at the Unification Ministry here in Seoul on Thursday downplayed the statement, claiming it appeared to be aimed at internal discipline rather than an external threat. Analysts here believe North Korea may be incorporating real-world combat strategies into its drills, given the regime's dispatch of troops to Russia's war against Ukraine. We are now counting down 99 days to the launch of the APEC leaders meeting in the Korean city of Gyeongju this autumn. That being said, my colleague Oh Soo-young recently sat down with a senior member of the organizing committee for his thoughts on the upcoming meeting and more. Do take a listen.
South Korea is marking the revival of K-democracy and setting the tone to inspire regional cooperation to connect, innovate and prosper amid mounting global complexity. Under the theme of building a sustainable tomorrow, South Korea will host the annual meeting of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum this October in the historic city of Gyeongju. Leaders from 21 member economies will tackle emerging challenges ranging from artificial intelligence and democratic shifts to sustainable and inclusive growth.
As this year's chair, the Republic of Korea has proposed cooperation on AI and addressing demographic changes as a key initiatives among many other global issues. We are working together with the member economies to adopt these initiatives as a standalone document alongside the Gyeongju Declaration at the leaders' meeting in late October.
South Korea is a far more prominent player than it was when it last hosted APEC about 20 years ago. And what's the significance, in your opinion, on South Korea chairing this year's summit in 2025?
Over the years, Korea has built trust and meaningful contributions in the international community. Building on that, the APEC Economic Leaders Meeting, which is returning to Korea after 20 years, will serve as a great opportunity for us to show that we will restore our K-democracy and that Korea is back on track after the political challenges we faced last year. The emblem and the smile of Sheila not only reflect our warmth and hospitality and openness, but also Korea's commitment in fulfilling our role as a responsible member of the international community.
Korea's chairship comes at a pivotal time, showing the country is back on track in global governance after the martial law declaration last December compromised diplomacy at the highest level. Seoul is also positioning itself as a solutions partner, sharing lessons from its own policy tools and technological transformation to help address common regional concerns.
Through this opportunity, we hope to share the experience we've accumulated and offer innovative solutions to help address the challenges faced by the Asia APEC region.
A key aspect of this year's approach is broader public engagement, particularly with the younger generation.
APEC pursues inclusivity and sustainability, but these cannot be achieved without public participation. We are also working to create platforms where young people can take a lead in discussing and sharing their visions for the Asia-Pacific region. As part of this effort, MOFA recently held an open call for youth presenters for the public-private dialogue. We even welcomed 16 young people to join our preparatory office as an intern.
Last May, Korea's inclusive approach led to the launch of a Future Prosperity Fund dedicated to youth entrepreneurship, digital skills training, and policy research. Korea committed $1 million in seed funding. As the countdown to October 31st begins, Korea is stepping up outreach with a series of promotional initiatives, including youth-led video campaigns, exhibitions, cultural festivals, and regional media engagement.
With active participation of the public at the core, we will continue to highlight the unique charms of Korea and the host city of Gyeongju, while also carrying out a variety of promotional activities that showcase the APEC vision, the goals and values of the K-APEC, and the outcomes we hope to achieve. Through these efforts, we aim to create a more welcoming and participatory atmosphere leading up to a successful leaders meeting.
Sure, and of course all this build-up of anticipation is extremely important, especially in creating this kind of conducive atmosphere for cooperation. And while we have great expectations for this K-APEC, as you said.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for making time for us today, and see you in Gyeongju.
Thank you.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. The third round of ceasefire talks between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul ended swiftly on Wednesday, with no ceasefire reached, but progress was made on additional prisoner exchanges. The two delegations met for approximately 40 minutes at Istanbul's Çırağan Palace and discussed further prisoner swaps, but remained far apart on the terms of a ceasefire and a possible meeting of their leaders. Both sides agreed to advance a prisoner of war exchange, committing to release at least 1,200 more POWs each, including severely wounded soldiers and civilians. Russia's chief delegate Vladimir Medinsky said the bodies of 3,000 Ukrainian soldiers will also be returned. Discussions reportedly included cases of abducted children. Ukraine's delegation, led by Rustem Umerov, proposed a direct summit between Presidents Zelensky and Putin by the end of August. However, Russia suggested forming online working groups on military, political, and humanitarian issues instead. The UN's top legal body, the International Court of Justice, has ruled that countries that fail to meet their climate commitments may be violating international law and could face paying reparations to countries suffering the consequences. In a unanimous advisory opinion delivered on Wednesday, the ICJ declared that wealthy and high-emitting nations are legally obliged to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, curb fossil fuel production and subsidies, and establish ambitious climate plans linked to the Paris Agreement. Judge Yuji Iwasawa emphasized that a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment is a recognized human right, and that failure to take adequate climate action may amount to internationally wrongful conduct, leading to reparations for states harmed by climate impacts. The advisory is non-binding, but small island nations and low-lying states, as well as environmental groups, celebrated the landmark ruling. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres also welcomed the decision, describing it as a victory for our planet. The UN World Food Programme announced on Wednesday that food and nutrition supplies in northeastern Nigeria have been completely depleted, putting 1.3 million people at risk by the end of July. The depletion is primarily due to significant funding shortfalls, largely resulting from major donor cuts, particularly from the U.S. Agency for International Development, which previously contributed approximately 45% of the region's budget. Over 150 nutrition clinics in Borno and Yobe states are also being closed, halting treatment for more than 300,000 malnourished children. The aid agency needs $131 million to restart operations in the region this year. Chongqing Zoo in China's southwest celebrated the third birthday of a pair of twin giant pandas this week. The twins, named Yu Ke, the brother, and Yu Ai, the sister, were born on July 22, 2022. A special birthday party was designed to help them stay cool in the region's summer heat, with frozen fruitcake sculptures, bamboo ice treats, and chilled play areas. While UI was resting in a non-exhibition zone due to a mild eye condition, Chongqing Zoo officials stated that both pandas are thriving, healthy, and remain popular attractions. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
Heatwave warnings have been further strengthened across the country. Heatwave warnings have been in effect in most parts today, with the top temperature in most regions rising to around 35 degrees Celsius. The heat wave will get worse and worse. The daytime temperature will soar to 37 degrees in Seoul tomorrow and 38 degrees on Saturday, which will be the hottest day this year, and the heat at night will get worse. You need to be extra careful not to get a heat-related illness under such hot conditions. Tomorrow, Seoul will start warm at 27 degrees, Busan and Jeju 26 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 35 degrees in Chuncheon and Daegu, 34 degrees in Gyeongju. For the time being, the whole country will be most clear, but there is rain forecast for Jeju Island only this weekend. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Thank you for watching. Our panel session is coming up next, so do stay with us.